Thanks so much for joining us this week. It's great to have your company. I'm Dora Amamuya.
And I'm Kent Kingston. Now, if today's episode had an official theme, Dora, I think it would have to be don't take simple stuff for granted.
Yeah. A bit later in the show, we'll take a look at a common kitchen spice that has surprising health benefits. But first up, it's Noah's Ark.
Yeah. Now, you might have thought that, hey, it's a great Bible story for kids, or maybe even that it has great spiritual value. But model maker Noel Deed is convinced that there's some very real substance and science behind Noah's Ark.
Awesome. Let's take a look.
Well, you know what they say about men and their sheds. I've got a Noel Deed here today who's really sort of gone a bit far, Noel. But this hobby of yours, boat building, has really turned into a ministry, and that's really what I want to talk about. Hey, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Kent, for the invitation.
So, for how long have you been into model boats?
Around about age 18, so it's a long time.
Oh, wow.
Goes back to the very first one.
Yeah. Wow, and that's incredible. And I guess all shapes and sizes of boats. Didn't you start off with a destroyer or something when you were
That's
when you
right.
were quite young?
What I call the jam tin special, about a metre long.
Yeah.
I cut these tins out, soldered them together, put a steam engine in it, out onto the river, turned the rudder, and it came
Big
back.
circle. So
That's
you're always pretty ambitious when it came to model boats, by the sound of it.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible. And here we have, well, and also a cross section here, we have Noah's Ark. Goodness, how long? Well, let's just look at this model for starters. How long did it take you to make this, and where did you get the gopher wood? Is what I want to know.
That model took almost 2 years to build. But before that, research as to the shape, timber and so forth.
Yes.
A lot of work, but I was so interested that I just worked and worked.
And the fascinating thing for me is that inside you've gone to a lot of effort here for the detail inside, with all these decks and compartments, and goodness, there's even tiny little animals in here to scale, or maybe they're just on my side here. I'll turn it around.
Yes, they are to scale pretty well.
So what is the scale?
The scale of the model is 1 to 85.
Okay.
The animal's 1 to 87, so it's a pretty good match.
Pretty good match. Okay. So you read Genesis, and you looked at the dimensions, and you figured out the cubits and all, and voila, is that the process?
Pretty well. Genesis 6 gives the length, the breadth and the height in cubits. And if we put that into metric, 137 metres by 14 metres by 23.
Okay. Wow, so it's pretty hefty. The thing, I mean, you did this, I guess, essentially for fun at the beginning, but this has turned into a ministry. Can you tell us how that's happened?
It has, in fact. Actually, I was challenged by a lady in our church, can you build a scale model? And after some thought and investigation, I thought, yes, I'd love to do that. And I was really seeking to prove to myself by doing a scale one that it would look like a real ship. And that's exactly what I did. When I finished that, I then turned to the cross-section, which is a different scale again, because I thought if people wanted to see it, that tells them what it's like as a boat. This shows what it's like on the inside.
Gives you an idea of the functionality, because of course a lot of us are used to sort of this sort of image when we think of Noah's Ark. You know, the children's book version with the giraffe with its head sort of poking out the window and that sort of thing. And it's really hard to believe that a boat like that could, deal with floodwaters and could fit all their animals in. But looking at this, suddenly it seems a lot more believable. Is that the reaction you get from people who say this does look like a real ship?
That is the reaction. In fact, the first time I exhibited this at a models exhibition, I was actually quite stunned at the reaction of the people. Because you imagine that boat being amongst 300 other models of scale ships. People coming along and looking at ship after ship, and then they come to this one, and the typical reaction was oh, is that Noah's Ark? Yes, that's Noah's Ark, but that looks like a real ship.
Yeah. Giving away that they actually have never really considered it to be a real ship or a real story.
Why did you think it was otherwise? And, you know, the typical cartoon version.
And then the conversation starts.
And then I'm able to come right through and say, well, you know, the dimensions of this are given in the Bible, or the proportions.
Yes.
Is that right? Genesis 6. And at the end of the conversation, they say, I'm going to go home and read that in my Bible.
Well, I mean, people must have some practical questions. I mean, looking at it now, I think, I mean, I'm a bit of a multi-hull man, you know, catamarans and trimarans, so I look at a mono-hull suspiciously at the best of times, but I look at this and I think, well, it looks like it could flip pretty easy if a wave hit it broadside. Wouldn't it sort of be all over for Noah and his animals?
Well, that's what you may think. But there have been at least 2 naval experts in the last 20 years who have examined those proportions, computer modelling, test tanks with various other shapes, and they have determined that as a drifting ship in the storm conditions that it would have gone through would have been very stable. It would have handled waves up to 30 metres.
Wow.
It would have leaned, but no more than about 30 degrees. And they've given a very impressive endorsement of that proportion.
Okay.
So the length is 6 times the width.
Yeah.
The breadth, or the beam, is 5 to 3. And they have been found to be just ideal for that purpose.
Okay. And what about lengthways? Are the proportions about right? Because I can imagine a big boat like this going with a wave under the bow and the stern, the middle sort of cracking. Is that a possibility with a boat this size? Or? Well,
let's remember that this is a timber boat.
Yes.
If it was a steel boat, it could be a lot longer. Given the kind of waves that storm would have generated, if that was much longer, there would have been too much of the boat unsupported by water, and it could easily have broken its back.
Okay, so it had to be shorter.
That 6 to 1 was ideal for the waves and side waves. If they had made that quite a bit shorter, the opposite result, coming up and down a wave, it could have just buried its nose and flipped.
Pitch pole, yeah.
Pitch pole.
Wow. Okay, so it's like Goldilocks's porridge. It is just right.
It's just right.
Yeah.
It's just right.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, Noel. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll be back in just a minute to ask Noel more about his ark and his ministry.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. That's just part of what makes it all so amazing. And that's why a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job. It helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
The media targets our girls with destructive messages. But is there an alternative? Yes, it's Gigi. Gigi is a great new magazine for teenage girls that uplifts good Christian values. Finally, a way to pass on our values in a way the teenage girls in our life will love. So give a subscription to a teenage girl you love today. Visit gigimagazine.com.au. That's gigimagazine.com.au.
Hi, welcome back. Well, I'm here with Noel Deed, model boat builder extraordinaire, and your incredible ark models, Noel. And look, this is a real labour of love. Goodness me. I'm all thumbs, you know, so when I look at this sort of thing, I'm in awe, I have to admit. Now, a lot of people, when they think about this, when they read the story of Noah's Ark, they say there are so many animals in the world, and Noah's Ark is just, you know, a limited size. Realistically, even with all the decks, could you really fit enough animals in to sort of repopulate the earth?
That's a good question, Kent. If we go back to the Bible reference, it talks about male and female of each kind, not each species. And as an illustration, if you take dogs, there would have been a male and female dog.
Okay.
Look how many breeds of dogs you've got today, the species.
Yeah. Well,
and you've got this adaptation and interbreeding. And if you follow that principle, go back to the kinds, there was a man, a geologist, biologist, who did a study of this, John Woodmarope, and he determined that there would have been about 8,000 genera, or 16,000 animals, creatures.
Yep.
Would have been just a few more because the clean ones, there were 7 and not 2.
7 pairs, wasn't it? Or
7 number.
Or 7, okay.
And the birds, there were 7 of those. He also determined that about 11% of the total number of animals would have been no bigger than a sheep.
Okay.
And therefore
Which is true, we even don't have that many large animals today,
a lot of smaller cages. We think of the elephants and the rhinos and the hippos, but there's not a lot of the really big ones.
So they would have needed to have, I mean, a species is pretty much what you need today to interbreed. There aren't many species that will interbreed, but maybe a genus. Yeah, I mean, it's not the way things are now, but they would have had to have been to interbreed and specialise in order to come up with all the species today. Is that what it comes down to? Well,
following the flood, it's thought that there would have been a lot of, almost an explosion of species.
Yeah.
When the animals were to go and multiply and fill the earth, and almost an acceleration of species and breeding and so forth.
The other thing I've also wondered is if they'd had baby animals on the ark rather than full grown, they also would have taken up less room.
Well, it's thought that you wouldn't take the biggest elephant or the old hippo.
Yeah.
It would be virtually the equivalent of a healthy teen animal, so it would have been smaller and healthy.
Okay.
So that would have saved a bit of space too.
So walk us through some of these decks here, Noel, and what had to fit in there.
Okay, we remember that the instructions to build the ark, there were 3 levels. So you've got your 3 levels. These are like a mezzanine to accommodate the much smaller animals.
Okay.
And it's thought that the heavier, larger ones would have been on the bottom.
Well, that'd make sense, yeah.
And as you go up, the smaller ones, and then the very tiny ones up the top.
Sorry, giraffes, you don't get to stick your heads out the top of the ark. Yeah, okay.
Well, they can put their heads up there.
Wow, okay. And what about lighting and airflow and that sort of thing?
That's an interesting question. We have a window right along the top which would have allowed a certain amount of light in and would allow for air circulation. That centre section is open so that you've got the possibility of ventilation and light coming through. But it's also generally thought that within the ark itself there wouldn't have been a lot of light. In fact, you would tend to get a degree of darkness down here.
Sort of a permanent evening, yeah.
That's right. And animals in a darkened situation tend to sleep.
They do, yes. They hibernate.
If you have a lot of darkness, they hibernate.
Yeah, okay.
And it's thought that hibernation would have made the journey much more simplified for Noah.
And they would have eaten less, of course.
So they wouldn't have to feed them every day. They may sleep for 2 or 3 weeks and then have another feed. They don't have big pens, so they're not running and using up energy. And then the outflow of that is that if they don't eat very much, they're not going to poo as much.
Sure, yeah.
And that other problem of cleaning the pens, it's not nearly the problem that some people think. And then when they do, the principle of recycling, you've got your dung beetles and your worms and so forth. In a cow paddock, you see that at work. And the same principle, I'm sure, would have been operating.
So a lot of work for 2 dung beetles and 2 worms, though, no? They would have had to have smuggled a few extra on, I reckon.
They might have had a lot more.
They would have had to. Wow. Yeah, some of the logistics are interesting. So when you present these details to people, when they see the models, what sort of response do you get?
They immediately start to realise that Noah's Ark was feasible. Instead of saying, well, it was a cartoon fairy story, couldn't have happened, they're now saying, oh.
Yeah, not that all their questions are answered necessarily, but...
No.
Yeah.
But it sets them thinking.
Yeah.
And they begin to then accommodate that this was a real situation. And of course that flows on. Okay, so the Genesis account, maybe that's true.
Yeah. So the book of Genesis, and then I guess the Bible overall, it goes to the reliability of the Bible. Because something like Noah's Ark is a sticking point for some people, isn't it?
It is.
You say, well, yeah, the Bible looks historical, but when I look at a story like Noah's Ark, goodness.
Well, the book of Genesis is often relegated to myths and fairy stories. But if the Ark is true, if the flood really happened, then the Genesis book comes back into real history.
Yeah.
And you've got the beginnings of everything in Genesis that flows through to the rest of the Bible. So the question becomes a very vital one.
Wow. And I guess one that you've become a lot more adept at answering since you started this.
Well, I've become fully convinced because of all the research that I've done.
Oh, it's built your faith as well.
It has.
Wow.
Certainly has.
Hey, thanks so much, Noel, for going to all the effort
Did you want to see the light?
Oh, yeah. Switch the light on for us. There you go, lighting. Now, they didn't have LEDs in the real Ark, did they?
Well, we don't know.
Hey, Noel, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time and for going to all the effort of bringing all this stuff in. Thank you for coming in and for your ministry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Such a cute old guy. And those models, man, it must have taken him ages to put it all together.
Oh, yeah. And look, I think I'm a hero when I whack together some, planter boxes out of recycled pallet timber or something. But this guy, man, he's next level, I'm telling you.
Totally. And it kind of makes you think about the Bible and take it more seriously, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Hey, it's time for break now, but we'll be back in a moment.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Welcome back. Now, Ken, how do you feel about curry?
Oh, curry. I feel very warm and affectionate towards curry, particularly if it's the sort of curry at about maybe 7 on the Richter scale. You know, not ridiculously hot, but something that, you know, bites you back, so, you know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm the same, but 5 or 6 though for me.
Okay.
This next segment focuses on a common curry spice that's not hot. It's turmeric.
Okay. So it doesn't have much of a taste. I'd always thought of it as just being about giving a bit of colour to dishes, but then I saw this.
Yeah, look, it's amazing. So to think from the land of India and the ancient Orient, we have this exotic spice, turmeric. It's just fantastic. And it prevents Alzheimer's. Sue, Rad, tell us about it.
Hi, James. How are you?
You got yellow on you now.
Turmeric is totally anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, and this is one of the most important mechanisms to prevent in the brain if you want to slow down cognitive impairment. They're also studying it for a range of other diseases. So, for example, cancer, they've now discovered there are more than 100 ways that turmeric blocks cancer.
Yes, and it works across the whole...
Well, one of the studies, in fact, that Dan Buechner quotes in his Blue Zones book is a study that's shown that turmeric is 1/5 as potent as cisplatin, which is a potent chemotherapy drug. But
and
besides
he's the longevity
cancer,
specialist.
Well, he's really into researching longevity populations around the world. But even diabetes. So there was an interesting study in Thailand, and it showed that people who were given curcumin supplements, and that's one of the key phytonutrients in turmeric, for 9 months, everyone who took the curcumin supplements prevented the onset of diabetes. Whereas if you weren't taking the curcumin, you had a high chance of getting diabetes.
So it prevents the onset, helps progression.
Yes,
and
and even if
you
you are an older person who has diabetes, they've now shown in Taiwan that if you use turmeric regularly, it helps with your brain function. So a particular type of memory called working memory, which is where you reason. So turmeric is really important from a cancer point of view, a diabetes point of view, and especially the more common, the more obvious inflammatory diseases like arthritis and inflammatory bowel disease. It's really, really medicinal.
What excited me was I want to keep my brain and my memory Alzheimer's. I think it helps. How much do you need and what kinds of turmeric do we have?
Well, traditionally and on average in India they would use up to about 3 grams a day, so that's roughly half a teaspoon.
Half a teaspoon? So I'll just hold this here so we can see.
But the most important message today that I'd like to give is just get it into your diet, and we're going to look at a few different ways. So this is the dried ground turmeric, but of course before we get that, this is what the raw turmeric looks like. It's a cousin of the ginger family. You can see how intensely orange it is in colour, and if you cut that, that orange colour will remain on your knife. So you have to wash it off very quickly. So it is potent in terms of its medicinal effects.
So they dry it and grind it, and it's powder. Does it lose potency?
And no, it doesn't. It's quite stable. But there are 2 types of ground turmeric that I think that are of interest to note. The more common one, the bright yellow one, is called Madras. But if you're looking for the high end, the more medicinal one, you need to source one called Alapi. Alapi turmeric. It's got double the concentration of these curcumins in it, and that's a more brown coloured one. It's got a more intense flavour. So let's have a quick look at how you could use it.
Yes, okay.
So there's your cup of tea, James. Put a pinch of ground turmeric, just a pinch, end of a knife, and stir that, and have a a sip of that.
I'll put 2 pinches.
On the island of Okinawa in Japan, the centenarian women sip on tea all day long, and they add a pinch of turmeric to their tea.
I feel so good.
But of course in India, do you like that? It is fine.
It's nice,
A teaspoon might be too much in that context, but it's amazing how much you can get into milk. And the flavour is undetectable. So this is something I made for you last night. This is warm. This is called golden milk in India, and they use it for when people have colds and chest infections, that kind of thing. And that has about half a teaspoon of turmeric.
That's the whole day's dose from my memory.
In one glass. It's got some other spices as well, cardamom.
As usual, anything on SueRad.com just tastes fantastic.
And of course, let's not forget, if you're making rice, just add half a teaspoon per cup of rice in your rice cooker, and that's another way of getting turmeric in.
Wow.
And something else I've got for you to taste. Yep, a delicious dal where you can add curry powder or turmeric. And incidentally,
Has this
curry
got the turmeric
powder
in it already?
This has turmeric and curry powder, but many people think of curry powder as having a lot of turmeric. It's actually a poor source of these curcumins. You need to get the real stuff, the turmeric. But have a try of that. It's an easy thing to make.
So the yellow comes from the turmeric?
You're having extra turmeric with your turmeric there. The key thing is just to get it in through your drinks,
very good.
Whether it's smoothies with the fresh turmeric, in your rice, in vegetable dishes, in stews and curries. Just eat it every day. It's potent stuff.
Well, I'm not going to join those little old ladies. I'm going to be a bloke. Cheers, guys. A turmeric drink. It's milk. It's beautiful.
And it's
what
delicious.
else do you put in? Cardamom?
Cardamom, other spices.
Oh, man, these food segments are making me hungry.
Well, lucky for you, Dora. That's it for this week's episode, so maybe it's time for a little snack.
A healthy snack, of course.
Oh, naturally.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Couch this week. All the best. We'll see you next time.
God bless.
Hi, how you doing? Hey, Jack, good stuff. Hey. Hey. Hi. Hey, it's Vegas. Hey, looking good, looking good. Hi. Hi. This is amazing. This is just amazing. It's a typical Vegas night. The city's alive. This is a city that never sleeps. You know, they've got the pyramids over here. You've got the Eiffel Tower over there. And right around the corner, you're in Venice. They're all fakes, of course. Genuinely fake. In fact, they say that most people prefer this over the original. Now, what are you guys doing here? What does it look like we're doing here? Anyway. Why are you filming without me? Who are you? I'm the real you. No, you're not. I'm the real me. Now, listen. You prove it. Well, I'm out of here.
To receive a free DVD of the documentary Beyond Counterfeit, visit hopeoffer.com/counterfeit or call 1300 300 389.